political dressing, political styling, what does that mean in 2024, and how does that kind of shape what we're about to see in 2025? This is the conversation I started having in my last video, where I said I do think we're going to see a lot of political dressing and a lot of binary dressing, whether it's means to assimilate or as means of protest. And it's just been interesting the more that I look into this topic and I create a working definition for my understanding. So I want to share my thoughts with you and see if we're kind of seeing the same stuff right now. So let's talk about it. By the way, my name is Jordan, and if you like fashion, commentary, and lifestyle content, check out my page. But if you want to see some other fashion stuff, check out the links below. Okay. So in my last video, when I was talking about the trends I see coming for fall 2024, I again mentioned that I saw this kind of political dressing, political styling becoming very prevalent. And this is something that I've been kind of seeing for the past year or so. Pre-election, importantly, I just kind of was like, I wonder where things are going. Post-election, and it's funny because I think back to, I think it was 2020 when Target had those like prairie house dresses. Do you remember what I was talking about? And people were making fun of it, like, who would actually buy that stuff? Unfortunately, I think it will be us in some coming months, but I digress. I want to share with you guys first my working definition of what political dressing is. Now, notably, political dressing is not anything new because fashion and styling specifically is political. So many different subgenres, subcultures, and fashion designers rise out of political situations. Very notably, Demna made that, I think, like 2021 or 2022 collection with the packing tape and that Kim Kardashian wore, and he was referencing fleeing from war-torn Georgia, I believe. So like there's always been politics in fashion because fashion is oftentimes a direct mirror or indicator of our lives. My working definition, political fashion, is when someone uses clothing, fashion, or styling to either subtly or mildly state their political affiliation and or religious affiliation as well, without using things like merch, costumery, like a cosplay. You do not use those things. So to give examples of kind of a gradient of like, this is not political dressing, this is just you being overtly political, to this is political dressing. My first example of a bad situation is Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa wore a Make America Great Again hat recently after he won, or he and his team, the 49ers, had won a game against some other football team. And very notably, he wore the hat when he was not being interviewed, but somebody else was. And then when he was later asked about it, his weak convictions had him buckling at the knees, and all he could do was look down and muffle, I just think it's really important or something. Anyways, I feel this strongly because other people like Colin Kaepernick had their careers ruined because they were standing up for people literally not being murdered. They were standing up against police brutality, which, fun fact, police brutality does extend past just Black people to white people as well. And it's so frustrating that is oftentimes left out by the media coverage, because then if we had unity, these people who are running things would not be able to run things as efficiently, and maybe change would actually come. But why would you want that when you can make billions of dollars off of separation? I digress. Let's keep moving. Even though Nick Bosa, again, does have racist allegations, because when he got married to Olivia Koplo, almost none of the other players, the Black players, went. I think there was one. Still not a good look. But we can't sit here and talk about Nick all day. We actually should talk about his wife, Olivia Koplo. Now, I think that her wedding dress was a really good start to political dressing for her, because if she could keep her mouth shut, it wouldn't have gone down the way that it did. She wore this like very meh wedding dress for her wedding ceremony, and it was covered by Vogue. I think that if it was just about her wedding dress, that it wouldn't have, again, gone down the way that it did. But the statement she made seemed very disparaging to women, especially like this hint of like elitism, which is really important to supremacy, because you have to believe you're just holier than thou and better because God made you that way. Because if you had to look at people like they're just people, then maybe you would develop empathy, sympathy, and want to actually help people like it says in the Bible. And why would you want to do that when you could just be hot and tell other people they're evil? Sorry, let me focus on the good parts about her political dressing. The modest gown, the photo styling, the way she did her hair, the light makeup. Her hair didn't seem very dimensional in those photos color-wise. It did look very gorgeous. This leans into this kind of like natural beauty aspect, as well as she said that she like only wanted to wear like blush or like one makeup item, even though she has had plenty of aesthetic things done. Aesthetic things don't have to be as drastic as like needles in your face. Like her getting, you know, facials every week or so in preparation, those UV light masks, different types of aesthetic procedures that again are not invasive, that average people can't afford, that give you that natural look, should be considered cosmetic, but they don't consider it because it's not directly makeup. Whatever. Anyways, all of these light nods to this kind of alt-right ideal of a woman, the only thing she's missing is the blonde hair, are present. But again, she goes on to talk very negatively about other women. She goes on to call other people evil. She does not call people ugly. She calls people evil when they don't like her wedding dress. I even think the wedding dress choice of designer, which was Dolce & Gabbana, where they have had racist allegation after racist allegation, and I only say allegation for legal purposes. They made slave sandals. They made caricature earrings of Black women. They hosted almost one of the most racist fashion parties of all time with D Squared. They've talked negatively about trans people. They've talked negatively about gay people. They don't think gay people should adopt either. They are against IVF. They're against surrogacy, which is interesting that they've worked with Kim Kardashian as many times as they have. Also because they've called the Kardashians trash, but just for funsies, they called Selena Gomez fat, unprovoked. What was that? With all of those views and still deciding to work with them, that also screams volumes about where you align yourself, who you are going to work with, who you support. And that's that kind of subtle nod, and that's that subtle indication of who you are and what you support as a person. And also the continuity was lacking for her outfits because she said, you know, I believe in the sanctity of marriage. I believe you should be covered up. I think you should present yourself in this way. And then she was like half naked in her next dress. So no continuity. It just seemed like she wanted to be holier than thou, which is on par, but not a good political fashion moment. The last one that I think is actually a really good moment, handled really well in all things considered, is surprisingly Ivanka Trump. Now, I don't talk about her very often for like obvious reasons, but she wore this blue Grace Kelly inspired dress to her sister Tiffany's wedding, which honestly, how dare you? You know you look better than Tiffany, and you still decided to wear that dress. This is giving some very Jackie Kennedy and Lee Radziwill energy. And if you know the lore behind the sisters, you know. It really felt like she said, girl, I ain't gonna give you a day. Okay, it's still about me. This is also at a time where Ivanka Trump was trying to get back into the good graces of New York, which I wonder how that's going right now. I wonder if people are calling her that were not talking to her 4 years ago. She wears this blue Grace Kelly inspired dress. It's gorgeous, but the important thing is the context. And it's also what's not being said, which is the fact that Grace Kelly is this really big icon from the 50s and 60s who is called an expat, but that's just American for immigrant. Clock that. She goes over to Monaco, marries a prince. She has one of the probably most recreated wedding dresses of all time, next to, I think it's like Elizabeth the first Elizabeth, Queen Mother, whatever, but the first woman to wear a white wedding gown. Like, people weren't just wearing white wedding gowns. And even now, the departure of the idea of white in American culture, and I would extend to Western, is still seen as so novel. So much so, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, that when I see South Asian women wearing white saris on their wedding day because they want to have that American fusion, I'm confused because I thought that was a color of mourning over there. But I get it to a degree. Like, it's the fusion. It's what's seen as bridal over here, but I digress. Grace Kelly is supposed to represent that idea of when people were great or the country was great because of the time period, because of who's wearing it. It's slightly modest in sense of like neckline and there's a shawl across it. It's showing you what a woman should look like, especially coupled with the context that her brothers have tweeted out recently when I believe like a Ukrainian or Russian or just Eastern European Miss Universe won, and he was like, biological real women are allowed to win again. Baby, they were always winning. You just didn't like when they were black. Let's call a spade a spade. It's a soft nod. It's a reflection of, it's the context of, and I think she looked great. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and hold her. I can be honest, and I can also say she's trying to rally up and evoke a sense of superiority and try to emulate when America was great to help her dad's career and campaign and whatnot. And I think that sometimes Ivanka's styling is not properly credited for how helpful it has been to her father's career specifically. And so those are my examples of political dressing. Now, I want to also note that these examples of political dressing are more recent examples, but political dressing has always been here. I have this book, Black Ivy, that I've been reading and looking at and understanding how the Ivy League aesthetic worked its way into the American Black aesthetic and why it did, understanding that for a lot of Black revolutionaries and people who were protesting, a way to meet the oppressor where they were, which not all white people are oppressors. I'm specifically speaking about the people who are oppressing, because there were white people alongside Black people helping to make change. But for a lot of Black people, this was a way of meeting these oppressors where they were so that they would see them as human beings because they're wearing their clothes. It's kind of like when you see someone dress up or dress down, like dress into a different culture, dress into a different age. It changes the way that you see them. It changes the way that you feel about them. And that's part of the reason why for centuries people have had relegations and delegations into how people wear their clothes. The French really wouldn't let people wear puce, which I always think about puce because it is technically lice blood pink, which I just think is interesting. But they have this puce color that they said you can't wear unless you're rich. They had other textures and textiles that they said you can't wear unless you're rich. Not even that you don't have the money, but you have to be in this social standing and you have to be in this class. So if you get caught with it, you would actually be in trouble. Fashion has been this important for a long time. Okay. And going back to the Black Ivy aesthetic, that is what for some white people did help them realize, like, oh, they look like me. So maybe they feel as I feel. Like they had to meet them at this representation that they understood. And I think this idea of meeting them in the representation, really assimilation, is really tricky, because when assimilation is done through choice, you can still hopefully go back to some of your own traditions or add your own way of styling things, which we often see through Dandyism, which shout out to the Met Gala, thank you for covering this. But through Dandyism, the same style of clothing is still very different, but it's culturally still, you know, in the Black community, whereas indigenous people who were stripped of their clothing, stripped of their styling, stripped of the way that they were allowed to wear their hair, and stripped of their mother tongue, it's much different for them in a way that I will never be able to understand as a Black person. I can only empathize and sympathize with because I have an idea because of being Black. As a lot of indigenous people reclaim, and this is like globally, as they reclaim part of their heritage, there are gaps in how they wear things that, you know, their ancestors, grandparents, aunts, uncle can't exactly help them connect with, because they're like, I don't know why this means so much to me, but it does. I don't know how to wear it appropriately, but I'll try to learn, or I'll try to like make them proud of me. And I think that is something that's been really interesting to kind of witness too. I say that because like I've been, there's a big community over in different pockets of Asia, specifically I'm going to talk about East Asia, or even in China, like you're seeing an uptick of traditional wear as a form of protest. And that kind of goes into another thing too. I was learning about heels, and I'll try to link the video below if I can, but I didn't know, you know, heels were such a big deal in the context of men were being thrown in jail for wearing heels for a period of time in the 70s and 80s. Which also goes kind of back into this binary that I talked about kind of earlier, where I don't think we're going to see people comfortably expressing themselves in anything besides men and women, which is not necessarily, I don't find that to be limiting, but I do understand for some people how that might not feel enough. You know, even the idea that like women shouldn't wear pants, that was something we talked about on my TikTok. It was like, even in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, people were discussing should women wear pants. At my mom's church, that she went to growing up. I remember being a small girl, like 5 or 6, and the conversation around the dinner table was, should women wear pants to church? Is that okay? Especially when biblically looking at the Bible, it says that women should not wear men's clothes and men should not wear women's clothes. And they're like, well, pants are for men. And it's like, well, technically back in the day, Jesus was wearing robes and stuff. Like, they weren't really wearing pants. It's really, I think, about the intention, the context, kind of what I was talking about with like political dressing. Pants aren't manly unless you are subscribing a manly idea to them. But, and which also pants don't make sense because, quite frankly, boys have balls. And wouldn't you be afraid of hurting your balls if you have pants on? Wouldn't it make more sense for men to wear skirts and women to wear pants? I've always thought that. I've always felt strongly on that. Yeah, as we talk about this stuff and we talk about political dressing, I think we're going to see people very focused on making sure they match what is expected of them. This is also part of assimilation styling. I think a lot of people will need to assimilate to style to be safe, kind of in the same way that Black Ivy was adopted, but this was, again, more to meet people where they were. I think that assimilation style in this case is more to be left alone and just blend into society. I know we talked about man repeller on that video where I was saying I do worry about people in blue pockets. So like in Dallas and Austin, kind of in Houston, that's a lot more purple than it is blue. But people who will think, oh, I can dress in a man repeller way to get men to leave me alone, and not understanding that that puts a target on your back. As someone who's grown up with some of these guys, especially in college, they see it as a test. They see you as something to conquer. They want to break you from being this blue-haired liberal to being in the kitchen blonde and babied up. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that this is all of those men. I'm just saying that there are a particular subset of men who really get off on the idea of breaking a woman's will in a way and getting her to conform into what they want. And they hunt almost for the girl that looks different. And a lot of people talked about protesting and, wearing whatever they want and doing whatever they want and like, come say, come sa. But I just feel like there's even layers in that I don't feel like discussing in this video right now. I think we're going to see a big shift also in how we style. I think we're going to see a lot of 1930s and 40s influence coming back. I think we're going to see a lot of heels coming back. I think we're going to see very gendered clothing coming back, like extremely, like think of the 80s mass market, like the fact that they were able to develop more clothes more quickly, ship them out faster, consume it more by going to malls. I think we're going to see a lot of gendered clothing coming back in that context. And I just think it's going to be a really interesting time to witness a paradigm shift in fashion history. I think that it's going to get very commercial and very boring for a period of time, very stagnant. I think we've kind of gone again, balls to the wall, unique and different. And there's this kind of tolerant intolerance that we should have had that now other people have just like no tolerance. They have a zero tolerance. And because people, in my opinion, are people in general, like humans in general, like order, they like organization, they like little compartments to put things, they'll fall into that a lot easier because it is just this guided idea versus having a free-for-all and kind of doing what you want to do. And I realize that even more so now after talking to people and kind of understanding why things went about the way that they did with the election, understanding that people really do lack community in a way that I wasn't even aware of, because I of course have you guys online as my community, but I have community in real life as well too. And I also enjoy my time by myself. And there's a lot of people who are stuck not being themselves. They're not able to find community within their family or within real friends, like people who genuinely care about you, or with community online that's like a safe community. And so they need someone to tell them what to do, how to dress, how to act, to develop this stuff. And where I think sometimes the more liberal side says be yourself, and then they shut you down when they don't like the version of you that comes forward. I feel like when people meet me in real life, sometimes they're surprised at how, as some would say, conservative I am. I've said this so many times publicly. I have a much more traditional background and I live a much more traditional life. I am a Christian Black woman from the South. So a lot of the things that I do in my home support that. So people are sometimes surprised when I say something, they're like, I thought you were this raging blue-haired liberal. And I'm like, first of all, I've never met a raging blue-haired liberal. That is such an internet take, if you ask me. But secondly, just because I'm progressive in a way where I want to protect other people doesn't mean I agree with everything I see going on. So yeah, that's just like my thoughts on political styling, dressing, what we're gonna maybe see a little bit of. I'll make some more videos. I have some videos lined up. I'm gonna talk about coats here in a second, probably in the same outfit. But yeah, thank you for joining me. I talked a lot today. I hope I like this video. And follow me on TikTok, follow me on YouTube, and check out my shop because I have some really cool stuff. Oh, outfit of the day. This is a vintage Ralph Lauren sweater. It's 100% cotton. Absolutely love it for the winter time because it's like 30 degrees. I'm still feeling quite warm. Probably my favorite set of vintage pink pearls. I need some more. I kind of wish it sat right here as you saw me pushing it back. And then these glasses are glasses from a place that I'm not going to say because they won't pay me. Okay, bye. Oh, and the nails, except for this one. They're supposed to be tortoiseshell. They look like cheetah, but they still look really good. Okay, I'll see you later. Bye.